Well, we are watching what could be the emergence of a new White House campaign strategy ahead of 2012. First, Democrats taking aim at the Tea Party in recent weeks. And now we're hearing a new message from President Obama to Republicans in Congress. Listen here.
We're going to see if we've got some straight shooters in Congress. We're going to see if congressional Republicans will put country before party. We'll give them a plan, and then we'll say, do you want to create jobs? Then put our construction workers back to work rebuilding America. Do you want to help our companies succeed? Open up new markets for them to sell their products. You say you're the party of tax cuts? Well, then prove you'll fight just as hard for tax cuts for middle-class families as you do for oil companies and the most affluent Americans. Show us what you got.
Joining us now, Leslie Marshall, a syndicated radio talk show host, Lars Larson, syndicated radio show host as well, and Leslie's a Fox News contributor. All right, so there seems to be a little difference there, Leslie, in taking aim at Congress. It's not so much the Tea Party, it's the Congress, it's sort of the do-nothing Congress who is stifling his agenda. Whether you like the Congress or you don't like the Congress, the numbers are not in their favor. They don't like the Congress, the American voters. They don't like the president's policy, the American voters. So could this be effective?
I think it can, Megan, and I actually think it's about time. In 2008, Hope and Change was effective. It was a different economy, and Americans were in a different place. Right now, the president, I think, needs to be strong. I am very encouraged as a Democrat, always saying, hey, where's his mojo? And I'm seeing his mojo.
He rolled up the sleeves and took off the tie, and you saw a different candidate.
Yes, and not only I see a different candidate, I think it's effective because, one, as you pointed out rightly, the polls show Americans actually are less favorable of Congress, and particularly Republicans in Congress, than the president. And he needs to show how he is different Republicans, and he needs to be specific in calling them out on where he differs and any hypocrisy he sees, such as saying, hey, you don't want to raise taxes, but wait a minute, you're not extending tax cuts for the middle class and the lower income families. And America needs to hear that.
How about it, Lars? You know, even though obviously I'm assuming you're on the side of the Republicans in the Congress, might this be effective to demonize the Congress? It's not me, it's the Congress. I've been trying to fight for you. They're the ones stifling my entire agenda.
I'm one of those conservatives out there. I consider myself one of those Tea Party SOBs that James Hoffa was talking about. The fact is, Republicans should put not party, but principles ahead. The principle of having the government spend us into more debt to try to do make-work jobs doesn't make sense. And the president talking about building infrastructure, the last stimulus was $830 billion, and they only spent $30 billion on roads, bridges, and airports. Megan, it doesn't make any sense. This is really ridiculous because the president is trying to find somebody new to blame. He knows after 2.5 years he can't keep blaming Bush. So he's saying, now who can I blame? I know, I'll blame the party that controls one of two houses of Congress. That'll work.
But let me ask you this, Lars. Let me ask you this, Lars, and then I'll go back to you, Leslie. According to this poll that just came out from Politico and George Washington University, they say that just 22% of voters identify with the Tea Party today, and that's as a result of the battle over spending that we saw over the summer. So while the Tea Party may have arguably won that battle, Lars, according to this poll, they may be losing the war because it turned off a lot of Americans. Thus, might the president's strategy work?
Well, I think the more important poll number was the one you cited earlier. Almost 2/3 of Americans think that the hope and change that President Obama said he'd deliver, he delivered, and it doesn't work. And as far as producing jobs, that baloney about making jobs, if we've lost 2 million net jobs during President Obama's 2.5 years, that is not a net gain. And you've seen the private sector job creation. It's not there. Now, I know they would say, but if it weren't for the stimulus, it'd be even worse than it is now. That doesn't wash. You have to put Americans back to work. And blaming the Congress, the president has a number of things he can do. We've talked about them before that are entirely within the control of his EPA, his Interior Department, oil leases and everything else that he could act on right now without Congress. He has chosen not to do so.
How about it, Leslie?
So
because he can blame the Congress, but he controlled the Congress. The Democrats controlled the Congress for the first 2 years of his presidency. And Americans understand that.
Yeah, and that's
Yes,
so
Americans
the thing is,
understand that, but Americans
aren't
understand, and Lars, you know, I embrace you, I love you, and you won't admit, but you got to agree with me on this, left or right, it is not the president's job to create jobs. You constantly say on the right, especially with the Tea Party, it's the private sector, but the private sector has been sending jobs and outsourcing jobs, and they're not insourcing. And I have not seen one jobs bill, Lars, from your guys on the right.
Leslie, you cannot outsource drilling for oil in the Gulf. You cannot outsource that to India. The president could make that happen again. The president could sign off on the Keystone Pipeline from Canada. That's 20,000 private sector jobs being held up by government paperwork. The president could take the treaties, the trade treaties, and send them over to the Congress, which he hasn't done.
All right, guys, I got to leave it at that. I thank you both for being here. Leslie and Lars, all the best.